The Witch's Warning by Joe Delaney, read by Lee Ingleby. Chapter 1. Old Nell. Crafty halted, his heart lurching with fear, his mouth dry. There were footprints in the white snow, each one smeared with red as if the owner of the clawed feet had stepped in a puddle of blood. Trying to control his terror, he walked on until he reached the grave, a black tombstone shrouded by leafless trees. There was no wind, but the branches were moving slightly, the twigs twitching with a life of their own. The black soil of the grave had recently been disturbed. There was no doubt this was where the dead witch dwelt. This was where she slept, bloated with blood. This was her secret refuge. Her name was carved on the tombstone, Old Nell. Crafty took a deep breath and prepared to leave. He had found the aberration. His work was done. He need not face her alone. Armed couriers would deal with her. But when he turned round, there was no comforting blue circle showing his escape route back to the castle. The gate had winked out. He was trapped in the Shole. All at once there was a noise from the grave, a slithering, sucking, squelching sound. The soil was moving. Something was slowly emerging. The clawed hand of the witch twitching with hunger. Grey and warty, it reached out through the soil as far as the elbow. The hand writhed, opening and closing as if searching for something. A second hand joined it, quickly followed by the head and shoulders of Old Nell. Her long grey hair was matted with black grave slime, and a sudden stench of loam and rotting flesh filled the air. Her face was wrinkled, the deepest line of vertical furrow between her tightly closed eyes. Then she opened her mouth wide. Both jaws had 3 rows of pointed teeth. This aberration was a predator that fed upon raw flesh and drank warm blood. Crafty's own blood froze in his veins. He watched as finally Old Nell opened her eyes and stared straight at him. He wanted to run, but he was held frozen to the spot by a pitiless gaze. As she reached for him, she spoke, her voice halfway between a growl and a croak. "This is what you deserve." And then she lunged for him. Crafty woke with a gasp, his heart racing even faster than it had in the nightmare. He sat up in bed, but the terrifying dream still hadn't left him entirely. It felt as though the witch's words had been spoken straight into his left ear. It was as if she'd been in the room, leaning over him while he slept. It might have been only a dream, but the witch herself had been all too real. Crafty remembered her saying something similar to him when she was alive. He and his fellow gate grubs, Donna and Lucky, had walked down the dark steps of the dungeon where the witch was imprisoned. It had smelled terrible, and was empty but for a bundle of what looked like dirty rags in the middle of the floor. Then, seeing a leg protruding, Crafty had realized that it was the witch, Old Nell. She'd been fastened by a chain to a ring set in the floor. The bundle of rags had then sat up slowly to reveal a wrinkled face, eyes like tiny brown buttons, and a shock of white hair streaked with dirt. The friends had been curious about her, but their visit hadn't gone well. She'd cursed the 3 of them. "Where you get what you deserve." Well, what did he deserve? Crafty wondered. To be grabbed and eaten by the dead witch, as she'd promised in his nightmare? What did Lucky deserve? Would he too die in the Shole, as so many gate grubs did? As for poor Donna, she was already dead. Had she deserved to die so young? Shuddering, Crafty climbed out of bed and went over to the window. It was barely light, but as he looked down the hill across the cobbled streets of Lancaster, he could see the edge of the Shole, a black curtain stretching from the ground high into the sky. Old Nell had been hanged, but it was rumoured that other witches had taken her body into the Shole, where people were killed or changed, though some of the dead were brought back to life there. Is this what had happened to Old Nell? Had his dream been more than a nightmare? Had it been a warning? That morning, Crafty and Lucky received their usual early training session. Theirs was a dangerous job, and the more you knew about the dreaded Shole, the greater your chances of staying alive there.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?